Valkyria Chronicles 3, aka Senjo no Valkyria 3 Unrecorded Chronicles. Released in Japan in January 27, 2011, Valkyria Chronicles 3 was never officially released in the US or Europe. Thanks to the translators at the aptly named Valkyria Chronicles 3 Translation Project, we can enjoy this without learning a new language. I used the PSP emulator, PPSSPP, to play Valkyria Chronicles 3, but there are ways to run it on PSPs with custom firmware, or so I've been assured. Valkyria Chronicles 3 was released just barely over a year after Valkyria Chronicles 2's Japan release date. That's a pretty impressive turnaround. In a Q&A with Sega, they said that they considered this Valkyria sequel to be the first true sequel because with the switch from PS3 to PSP, they made a lot of mistakes. Now familiar with the hardware, and with some help from developer Mediavision, the company behind the Wild Arms series, was Sega able to create a true sequel to Valkyria Chronicles? Well, first off, I don't really think Valkyria Chronicles 2 was such a bad sequel. It did suffer from the transition to a less powerful system, but I think it handled it pretty admirably. Its story didn't knock my socks off, and its gameplay was repetitive, but it still managed to solve some issues I had with the first game. The main gameplay system, the Blitz system, remains almost completely untouched in this third installment, so if you need a lowdown on how that works, you can watch one of my last two Valkyria videos. The system is still as fun as ever, even if it doesn't have my favorite tactical RPG staple, tiles. Valkyria Chronicles 3 starts off strong. You join Squad 422, known as the Nameless, a penal squad where the penalty for disobeying an order is execution. You play as Kurt Irving, a breath of fresh air after protagonist Yvonne Harding from Valkyria Chronicles 2. Stoic, confident, and with a sweet tooth, Kurt is determined to make his way back up through the ranks after a string of bad luck sends him to Squad 422. Because the squad is a secret, disavowed unit, all the members have to give up their names. Clad in black uniforms, they become numbers. Kurt Irving becomes number 7. His only way to be pardoned is to lead this unit on suicide mission after suicide mission. Story-wise, the game does a lot better than Valkyria Chronicles 2, but still suffers from overlength. Valkyria Chronicles 3 is easily the longest of the three games, and while the story might merit 35 to 40 hours, the developers pad out this game to be around 50 to 55 hours. They do this in a more palatable way than Valkyria Chronicles 2, where 2 had a bunch of free missions with no bearing on the plot. This third installment at least makes free missions less plentiful and incorporates almost all battles into the overall story. The problem is the story suffers from villains that, despite being on the receiving end of multiple gunshots to the head and being blown up in their tanks, they keep popping up battle after battle, protected by apparent plot armor. This, coupled with the lack of stakes when it comes to your own teammates falling in the battlefield, neuters the game of the bleak tone that it sets forth at the beginning. Even the first game has a more realistic outlook on the outcomes of war, even if it is balanced with the optimistic lead protagonist Gunther Welkin. This game does bring a more interesting leveling system to play called the Master Table, which encourages players to switch up their individual units' classes when they've learned all their tricks. The Master Table is all about connections. Every class has 3 potentials they can learn. A Shock Trooper can learn 1 potential. After enough experience has been gained, the Shock Trooper will level up to become the Shock Trooper Veteran, which also has a unique potential, and so on with the Shock Trooper Elite. Once the same unit changes to a Scout and unlocks the base potential from that class, they'll then unlock a linked potential, which are usually crazy good. Not a crazy amount of customization with the rest of the game, but this Master Table is a nice extra layer that rewards varying your playstyle. As usual, Hitoshi Sakamoto kills it on the score. The guitar is given special attention on the soundtrack, which gives the music in the game a distinctive personality over the previous two. One of the cooler aspects of Valkyria Chronicles 3, before it delves into complete fan service, is its linkages to previous games. Valkyria Chronicles 3 takes place parallel to the events of the first Valkyria Chronicles, which leads to hearing about and re-experiencing battles from that game from a different perspective. That part I appreciate. The part that seems a bit lazy is how often Valkyria Chronicles 2 main characters will pop up when it's clear that it's easier for the developers to just shoehorn in one of those characters again, rather than create a brand new character. It ends up making the game's scale feel smaller when you're bumping into Yvonne and revisiting the same locations multiple times. It's a quibble, but if you play the game you'll find out Kurt is a quibbler as well. I don't mind the copy-pasting of maps from the second game. I do like the improved interface and cutscenes. I don't want to spend too much time talking about the flaws with the fan translation because I'm too grateful to dwell on spelling mistakes and speech bubble errors. Without the work of these selfless individuals, I would never have had the chance to even play this game. My main gripes with the game is that it's about 10 hours too long, and it doesn't take its so-called darker, somber tone further than just appearances. If this game had looked more honestly at the effects of war on its characters, I think the story could have gone into a more worthwhile direction. The thousands of soldiers my squad mowed down don't really seem to affect them. The consequences of killing are handled rather plastically for my taste. Overall, a well-made game that improves on the second game but still isn't the breakthrough sequel that the first Valkyria Chronicles deserves. On next week's episode, just kidding, it's gonna be way more than a fucking week. On the next episode of it has pretty much become the Valkyria Chronicles show. On the next episode of the Tactical RPG Odyssey. I don't know. I'll let you vote.